María Jesús.
Y yo soy Stephanie.
Gracias por escuchar otro episodio más de Empodérate de Chicanos por la Causa. ¡Empezamos! Hola, ¿qué tal? Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Empodérate de Chicanos por la Causa. Estamos de manteles largos. We are very happy to have this time and join us after several attempts to get him to, but he is a busy guy and he'll tell us why and what his journey was like. Edward Dennis, a visual storyteller,
yes.
Then a former teacher,
yes.
avid hiker, is it?
Cyclist
For sure, right? Yeah. And so many more, illustrator and so many stories that he will share with us.
Yeah.
So good to see you again, Stephanie. ¿Cómo has estado?
I know. Aquí, trying not to get too crazy for the holidays, but I'm getting ready, mentally prepared, and physically preparing.
We need to lose a little bit of calories so we can gain more.
Yes, I wish talking burned as many calories as eating, because I'd be good. But yes,
I think I burn calories by watching others like hike or just get outside and walk.
I used to think that, and then it stopped working. Right?
I wish that was true.
I know, right? No, but thank you so much for joining us, Edward.
Thanks for having me.
And we have Mr. Luz here.
Yes.
We have your books. Thank you for being here, and we're excited to get into more about getting to know your work. But before we get into your work and talking about The Boy from Mexico, tell us a bit about your roots and your origins so we can get to know a little bit of where you are and where you come from.
Yeah, so I was born in Phoenix. I grew up in Maryville. I don't know if anyone knows where that's at.
Yes, that's where I am. I was on 51st Avenue in Indian School, on Camelback, actually.
Okay, yeah, I was on 75th and Indian School. Grew up by Starlight.
Veronica, what, 59th and...
Yeah, I grew up by Starlight Park. I played t-ball there and stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, I don't know if anyone knows that, but yes. So in about fourth grade, my parents decided to move to Peoria. So imagine growing up in Maryville, as you all know and are familiar with, and then going straight to Peoria.
Yeah, Peoria was very different.
I very fast learned that I looked different, I sounded different.
Wow.
And it wasn't always easy to have, try to talk to Caucasian kids about, why I'm darker than them, why my hair's darker, why my eyes are darker, why my last name's Dennis.
Right.
It's not like Gonzalez or Hernandez, right? So there's a lot of things to talk about. And then, ultimately you get the question where are you from?
Right.
And, at that time, immigration is such an abstract concept for children. I had nothing to tell them. So it was rough.
Yeah, I imagine.
That kind of led me to where I'm at now. So
cool. So you're born from here, and you're third generation.
Yes.
And you said your last name is Dennis, which of course I'm sure you have a lot of questions. Tell us a little bit more of where that comes from.
Yeah, so my last name is technically Dennis Flores.
Oh, okay.
Yes, but when my great-grandfather, this is him, and this is what the book's about, when he crossed for some reason, I don't know exactly, because my grandfather still doesn't know the whole story, but the railroad changed his name. Oh. So he worked for a copper mine in Ajo, and then he went to the railroad in California, and they changed his name, and then he worked a bunch of different jobs. So I don't know if it was something that he did, but I know that the railroad was the reason why his name, Flores, got taken off the name.
It was in the Bracero program time?
It was in the 20s. So, yeah, it could have been something where they didn't want someone with that last name there. I don't know.
Right, in the immigration.
Which is something that we experience a lot, that we, there's actually some, very affluent Hispanic families that I've met in Tucson or here, and they have a very how can I say it? It's not normally what you would associate a Hispanic person with the last name, right? And what is that? How do you think that your origin has inspired your art now and like the direction where you're going with your books?
Yeah, well, growing up, and especially as my time as a public school teacher, I taught not far from
Right
here.
across the street.
Yeah, I taught at the district. So
elementary school.
Yeah, I worked for Phoenix Elementary School District. So I taught special ed and I taught gifted ed. So I went to many different schools, but I definitely was at Herrera a lot.
Okay.
And it was one of those things where, I saw an opportunity to, I guess, enlighten children about where they're from and how to communicate that with other kids. Because at the time I quit was around the time Donald Trump was, I don't want to get political, but he was in office and things like that. And I had a lot of kids asking me questions.
Wow.
Is it true what they say about us on the news? So the kids were already hearing things from the news.
We know how he launched his campaign, so
yeah.
I figured that they would have questions.
And they had a lot of questions, and they were the same questions, sadly, that I had about my own self. When I moved from Maryville to Peoria, the kids would ask me the same questions. And the only difference was at this school, all the kids were Hispanic. They were it's like 98% Hispanic. Where at my school, I was the only brown kid there. So it was me versus a bunch of brown kids trying to, disseminate all this information that I heard from my family. Like, oh, I'm from Mexico. I didn't know where, right? I didn't know what that even meant as a kid. So there was a lot of things that led up to me saying, that aha moment where I was like, you know what, I should make a book.
Wow.
So that these kids can understand where they come from and just have a clearer picture, or maybe even talk about it to someone else. Say this is where my family comes from.
Yeah.
It's not the exact same story as this, but it's similar.
Or go back home and ask their families to understand what was their journey too, because they may have a different journey that they may not know about.
Right.
Where was Luz from? What was your great founder? What state in Mexico?
So I did a lot of research leading up to the book. My family is from mainly Sonora.
Okay.
But in the book, I put him from Michoacan because I researched my ancestry, and about 10 generations ago, the name Dennis is German, which doesn't sound like it, but it's German.
Wow.
So someone from Germany, his name's Anselmo Dennis.
Wow.
Yeah, he came 10 generations ago to Michoacan area, and then he and his wife, they had, I want to say they had like 8 or 9 children.
Wow.
And they moved up from there. They're selling, this is from the documents, they're selling carpets. So they moved up from Michoacan to Sonora, and that's where they settled, and all their kids, married in. And so I have the family tree. It's really cool.
That's so cool.
Maybe I can send it to you guys, but it's really cool to see their names up there, and then, see where Luz is. And just to as a formality, Luz is named after my mother's grandfather, because my mother passed away, so I wanted to honor her. And my great-grandfather's name is Jorge Francisco. So Jorge Francisco is my great-grandfather, and it's cool to see his name on there and then see that he and his brother Tomas are the only ones to leave Mexico. They came from Mexico to the United States. And it's one of those things where I would ask my grandfather, like, why did he do that? And so, it's really cool.
It's actually really cool that you found your lineage to back then, because one of the most difficult things is that, I've actually tried to connect. And I think this is something that we do as being maybe, I'm first generation here, but I feel like as more generations get disconnected from their culture, we're getting all of these questions and curiosities. Where are we coming from? And I mean, ancestry, DNA, hello, like everybody's having these questions, right? But it's so hard to find in the registros civiles of Mexico. Yes.
Although lately they've been digitized, a lot of them, but I think...
But if they didn't record them back then, which a lot of pueblitos or ranchos did.
Or the cursive writing, right? Trying to understand.
Oh my God, yes, which is difficult.
Yeah, I've seen some of those documents, and it looks like, it's like, were you guys even trying? Or like who was reading that back then? I don't know.
Who made you mad?
Yeah, it was just like...
So you navigated, you went through this whole like process of like doing, which is extensive research, I want to say, because if you were able to find all of that, I'm sure you spent several hours finding that information or sorting through it. And which connects to this question. how does that happen where, your connection and your curiosity for your own journey inspires you to become a visual storyteller? And how has your culture influenced your work?
Yeah, so I think my culture has influenced my work. I'll start with that part and like how it led me to become an artist, because my books, and I haven't really told anyone really this, but my books are almost a proof of concept. So I have other books coming out in the future because my ultimate goal is to be a director.
Oh,
I want to direct an animated movie based on my books.
Awesome.
Sign me up.
Yeah, so
let's
that's
do
what I want to do. And I won an award this year for that with
Congratulations.
Netflix and the Latino Film Institute. So I won for the script and the storyboard based off of my 3 books. This is the only one that's out yet, but that's kind of my end goal. But what has led me to that was really that experience of going from a very diverse neighborhood like Maryvale into Peoria.
Right.
And then being separated from my culture through assimilation, right?
Yes.
You stop speaking Spanish.
Yes.
I hate saying it, but there was many years I didn't like Mexican food. I didn't like the color of my skin. I would go home and try to rub my skin with a sponge to make it lighter.
Or in the summer, stay out of the sun.
Yeah. Right. And not only that, there was people on my mom's side of the family who they all married Caucasian people. So I had to deal with that at school. And then all my cousins were half. So a lot of my cousins were blonde with blue eyes, and I would get criticized by them. And it was a lot of things. I don't want to bring up family drama, but
no, it's a very relatable story.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where it's like, all right, I'm darker than everyone else. When I first started getting facial hair, I had like a mustache already. It's one of those things where it's like, okay,
you can't hide certain things.
Yeah, you can't hide who you are as much as you try to run from it.
Right.
And I finally was like, you know what? I'm going to embrace my culture and who I am. And I would like to get back to my roots.
Yeah. And
especially working at the school district was very nice because all the kids looked up to me. They were all brown. And I was like, man, I want to do something. Because at first my career was going in a certain trajectory where I wanted to work for Marvel. I've worked for Disney before and I wanted to do things like that. And then I was like, you know what? I don't want to do that. I want to do something, even if I am on my own, because publishing is very hard. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I was like, I want to do it for my people, for my culture. But mostly I want to do it for any kid that ever felt like me growing up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think there's a lot of similarities. I know I can relate, right? When you're trying to figure it out yourself and what's your place within the community that you are, how to behave. Yeah. How can people accept you, especially when you're, evolving from one school to the other. And then certainly when, in my case, certainly my accent and how liberating it is when you finally get to that point and you said, well, this is who I am. Yeah. And I love who I am and everything that I am and everything that comes before me and that will come after. Right. And so embracing culture, that certainly it's a pivotal moment. When did it come for you?
I would say probably 8 years ago, I had that moment where I was like, this is who I am. I need to accept it. There's a lot of people in my family that I get it. They grew up in a different time. They have a lot of, I guess, trauma or self-hate for how they look, and they kind of passed it on to us. Yeah. I had people in my family, I won't name names on here, but they would say things, like, oh, Edward's the darkest one in the family. And even when you just say little things like that, it's like, yes, it's like, and then I had another aunt, I slipped, but someone said,
tea times is later.
Someone said, Edward, it's weird because, we're third generation. And I had someone say, well, Edward looks like he belongs across the border. And we had just came back from, visiting a family member in Mexico. So it's like, wow, that makes no sense. I don't get it. So
especially with our brains that are so naive and innocent to really everything that is involved in immigration and migrating. I think that, a big thing that we haven't come across, which it's so great that you do this, because I remember growing up, I would hear, I'm the daughter of an immigrant, and I heard stories of how the crossing was, but I could never imagine half of what was said.
Yeah.
Or if I did imagine, and it's still like embedded in my brain as I made it, as I created it, right? So seeing how we can actually connect with our cultures is a really cool way of how you connect that. But let's going back into like the persecutions or the different racisms that were created within our community and outside, a form of protection. And I could say even like going to school, I think a form of protection. Inner city kids are brutal.
Yeah.
We roast the crap out of each other.
Yeah.
So it's like you become so easy to be roasted for certain elements or certain characteristics of you, and then you just start hiding them. You're like, I'm not going to give him more things to roast me about.
Yeah.
You know, I grew up with my sisters being from Sonora, but they had more of a lighter skin, and my sister was green-eyed. I have a different dad, and my dad is from Michoacan. I don't have a lot of that history of that family, of that side of my family. But again, that disconnection, I'm like, why am I always the darkest one? Or why am I always the one who is being singled out? Or I look different. It's such a distinct memory, and it can create certain, I don't want to say, I mean, yeah, it could be trauma. It could be
complex. It gives you a complex.
Yeah,
absolutely. So there is a lot of unlearning and learning that needs to happen, right? Because it was seen, decir el negrito de la familia, or right, that it's something that is fully acceptable and like you're saying, funny and roasted. Especially the bigger the families are, the easier is that you were roasted. You would say something like that, and right? and so there is that process of then unlearning and then teaching the next generation, which and following. I'm like, this is not okay because you're.
And then going back to your original question about my aha moment, that was around the time Trump was elected, and I heard the kids saying stuff, and then you'd go online and see. You know, you're just shocked to see family members that support someone that's saying things like that. And then you sit back and go, wow, it's just, I think that was a moment where I was like, these people aren't who I thought they were, whether they're family or close friends. And I said, and I saw them literally going to war on the keyboards, right? On Facebook or Instagram.
Keyboard warriors.
Yeah, they were just going at it paragraph after paragraph. And, you know, your blood is boiling because we're all passionate about certain things.
Yes.
This happened to be what everyone's passionate about.
Right.
And, especially the immigration topic. And I said to myself, you know what? I'm seeing these people literally like, it's like talking to a brick wall. I can't do anything. I'm going to try and help the kids. And that's why I wrote the book, because if there's a kid out there, whether they're brown, white, or black, whatever, they read the book, at least there's a chance there that they can be compassionate. Because a lot of the adults, it wasn't going to work. And I have a lot of adults that actually, they say bad things about my book, or I had someone actually buy my book and rip it up. And they showed a picture of it in the trash and they said, "What? This is what I think about your book." And I'm like, well, I know no child will ever do that. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's such a, like, in these last few years, specifically, the children are being so exposed to media, and now they're being exposed to things that, for example, like, you know, with all of the migrations that happen, all of the kids that we saw coming that were migrating themselves, you know, now we have these stories that are compassion driven that can say, hey, he looks different, but before I make my conclusions, let me try to figure out. There was a really cool story
behind it.
Yeah. So that's beautiful that you're creating that space, which you could have gone to do one of those really,
it's about taking action, and what an amazing way to empower others. Right, saying this is what I'm going to do about the situation. And I'm going to make my space and open this door up.
Yeah, for sure.
To conversation, which is really about creating awareness and having that conversation.
Yeah.
That's all I want the book to be.
All the time.
An icebreaker. You know,
with the most important generation that can listen or change, which is our future generations, which are the children. You know, like sometimes you can't change a tree once it's already grown crooked, but hey, there's still a chance for humanity. There's still a chance for people nowadays. And going a little bit into your educational days, because you have to be, I think, a very selfless person to be in education and to take a route like you're taking, when you can go, obviously you're talented, you can go in so many different routes. But touching on your educational years, you can sense that you had a heart for your students and you connected with them. What were some of the holiday celebrations and traditions that maybe, let's say we weren't so accustomed here, but that you saw?
Yeah. So a lot of traditions, and it's interesting because you guys are right next to the school, but a lot of the kids, you'd be shocked, but a lot of them, their families are still in Mexico. So we would always have them write letters to their family. And I always taught them how to draw or paint and something like that. So we would paint little letters for their family and send them off.
How did you see the kids in that moment?
It was awesome because that's what my grandmother did. And that's what I like to do too, is write little letters for people. And
that's
it's
so
very
amazing.
personal, you know,
It
it's
is,
instead
absolutely.
of sending a gift card for something that, you know, they can buy. It's more personal when you take the time out and, you know, spend 30 minutes, an hour doing a little card.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. Yeah. Whatever you can do with your hands, it's just priceless for sure. What, so throughout your career, there's been a lot of challenges, I'm sure. So tell us about, what has been for you like, what was your journey like in publishing your first book?
Yeah. How much time do we have? No, I'm kidding.
We have 20 minutes.
Okay. So,
Especially about immigration. I mean, you face it.
It's not an easy feat, for sure. That's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, well, so, you know, you start, I like to plan like 5 and 10 years ahead.
Good for you.
So by the time I'm 40, I want to have 5 or 6 books out. And then by the time I'm 45, I want to at least like direct one animated movie.
Awesome.
So I have all
Can't
these.
wait to watch
We'll be rooting for you.
Thank you. I hope it happens. So yeah, I just plan out really far. And then I kind of, what I was taught at school at ASU, right, when you're teaching is like, you plan with the end in mind. And then I started building little steps, like, how do I get there? And I didn't know anyone in the publishing world at all. So I had worked with people where I illustrated their self-published books, but I saw the roadblocks with that. Like, first off, it's extremely, if not impossible, hard to get into a big retailer like Walmart or Target or Barnes & Noble when you self-publish. Not only that, you're not really taken serious. And unless you're like, I guess, I don't know, Mariah Carey, if she decided to write a book, right? She can do that because she can fund it herself. She's famous. I'm a no one. So I was like, how do I start this? So I looked up online. I Googled a lot. I researched a lot. I love to write. I love to draw. So I drew out a huge story and then I cut it into 3 books. And I decided, okay, how am I going to get this published? Again, I Googled more. I came across agents. I came across publishers. I got rejected close to 100 times over the period of, I want to say 6 months. And then I started researching more and found out that some people never get their books published. But I was like, you know what? I spent too much time on the art and the story that I can't
Just let it
give
go.
up.
No
So ultimately,
answer.
I couldn't let it go. And I quit my job as a teacher and I just started full-time emailing anyone and everyone that would listen. And ultimately I had a few publishers, about 10. I had 7 agents and like 4 publishers.
Wow.
And it really went up to who believed in the story. Several of the agents wanted me to, one of the agents and one of the publishers and 4 of the agents, trying to remember all this. This is actually a while ago. This is like in 2019.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was a while ago. They wanted
Pre-pandemic,
yeah,
too.
they wanted me to change the character into an animal because they didn't want. They thought it was too realistic to have a little brown boy on there because it's too resemblant of what's on the news. They felt like
It's too real.
it's too real. Yeah, they felt like it was too real. It needs to be more fantasy. And they were offering me a good cut. They were offering me money up front and good royalties. But I was like, that's not the story I wrote. Because as a kid, I remember looking in the books and not seeing anyone that was brown.
That's true.
There was always animals. There was always
Yes.
cartoons about animals. My favorite cartoons have animals, right?
You're
My favorite
right.
books have animals.
You're right.
But I was like, okay, that's not the route I want to go because I always wanted to see myself in the books and I never did. So I ultimately went with a publisher out of Miami, Florida, and they're Mongo Publishing. They're really good. They're a smaller publisher, but they gave me everything I wanted. I wanted a cost-effective book. That's why it's paperback. A book that families can afford. because there was an option to have a $25 or $26 book, right? $25.99 book that would be hardcover. And then there was the paperback version. And then I got to choose the paper. I got to choose the type of, cover it would have, things like that. So that was really nice. And
all of that goes into just tying in the cost where it's going to be. So you have to think about all that so that you have a good price point for your book.
Yeah. And, I wasn't at the table for all those meetings because they have it's their company, and I did sign a contract and they have rights to it. But I did say, hey, my family's, they might not be able to afford a $26 book. I know when I was younger, my mom wouldn't buy super expensive books for me.
Right.
I will say, though, the second book, which is a direct sequel to this, is going to be hardcover. But that's more because they want it to be in all the libraries and they want it to win awards. So
that's fantastic. Yeah. Sounds very familiar. The lessons that we hear, right? Is like continue to knock on the door, continue to send those emails, be persistent, stay true to yourself.
Yes.
Know what you're willing to negotiate.
Yeah.
And what you definitely, it's not what is your best authentic self. And if it's not going to be that, then you keep moving forward until you find it.
It was hard. I won't lie. There was times where I was very down because I would get rejected.
Right.
And some of the times they didn't just say no. They would be like borderline mean about it. It's just like,
God, like the criticism, like you already are criticizing yourself plus all of these extra people. And especially because, you got to think about it. This is your baby. Yeah. Like literally look at how you're holding this little loose over there.
Yeah.
This is your baby. And it really stinks to see like, and I think, and I'll go back to this and I'm a very metaphorical person. As creatives, we birth, and as anybody who's creating anything, we're birthing things that are coming from our soul, from our side, from inside of us. So it's like, this is your baby, and now you're getting all these people criticizing and telling you how it should be better. But one of the things that I think, like, keeping the price point, the amount that it should be, advocating for our communities. And I think that's the thing.
And representation,
yes,
right?
the representation.
Somebody that looks like
us, but that also knows the struggles. And I think this is why we created this podcast, because being in the community, Chicanos por la Causa, this has been an establishment and a movement that started many, 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 many years ago in a college campus, when the college movements, but that has transcended through so many different aspects because our communities don't have those voices, or didn't have those voices that were getting to the right places and to the right ears to stand up. So it's really cool to hear that, like our previous guests too, you're not just going for what is available to you. Now it becomes a selfless act that is advocating for our communities and saying, I needed somebody that looked like me, and I'm not going to take a stand unless there is someone that looks like me and those kids now, so
absolutely.
It's so cool.
Yeah. And I remember seeing your story of evolving on Instagram too, as you were creating and launching the book. Yeah. How has that been like now that you have the product in hand, finally it's done, and that then you head into the tour and then not only the places that no one would be expecting to see
that like?
Someone like you in a book like this.
Yeah, well, I remember I was at Beverly Hills, and I had my first book launch event in last December, so almost a year from now, a year ago, and it was scary because, it's Barnes & Noble, and that they don't have any books on this topic. I think there's only like 6.8% books that are about anything Hispanic.
Wow.
And then within that 6.8%, it's called Own Voices. There's Caucasian people writing stories about us. So within that percentage, we have
still a smaller percentage.
There's a smaller percentage.
They're stealing our stories.
Yeah, they're stealing stories and they're using their voice to make money. And I won't get into that. But yeah, going into my book launch, it was scary because, you get rejected so much in the first process. You're like, I hope no one rejects me now. Like when I'm reading the book live, but it was a great turnout. A lot of kids, a lot of families. It was cool to go there and know that it's not the last time I'll go there.
Nice.
And it's just one of those things where I'm probably one of a handful of Mexicans that was doing a book launch there.
Wow.
I know George Lopez was there like the week before me.
Wow.
So it was cool to be there at the same store he was.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where it's like, I want to keep doing this.
Yes.
And doesn't matter how many times they tell you no.
Yeah.
Because they're going to continue to tell you no, because it's white people that do run the industry, whether they're agents or they're the ones that run the publishing houses.
Yeah, you're too in film and in
Right.
You're in two industries that are, I'm sure, as being Mexican American and Latino, it's not one that we see a lot of shot calling. You know, I think that we are involved, but there comes a certain way, and this is why I personally, and I know Maria Jesus too, but we're so passionate in making a platform, right? Because there's so many cool people like you that we can't see, that we don't get in front of the mic, and intertwined in our communities that we get to see and we fall in love with, but that, you know, are creating this change. I think that it's really easy for us to make this very minimalized, right? But I think that it's a really big deal that you are a Mexican American author and illustrator, and that you are pertaining so authentic to your roots, that you're choosing to stay true to your roots. How did you even come about creating this book? What started this?
Yeah, I wanted to, I guess, have that part of my life back, like we were talking about earlier, where I felt like after moving to Peoria, you know, God bless Peoria, it's awesome, but it's very, there's no culture there.
Yeah.
You know, you go to Maryvale and there's all kinds of things there that remind me of who I used to be, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. It's just one of those things where it's like, I want to make something that when I'm gone, you know, after I leave here, I have a set of books that kids can, you know, if they go through the same thing I went through, they can pick up one of my books.
Right.
Hopefully I have 15 or 20 by then.
Yeah, and a whole movie.
Yeah.
But particularly, I guess I'll rephrase the question. How, when you created this, you interviewed students too, right?
Yeah.
When you created this, how did you create it? Yeah, like the process of how you created.
I looked through my ancestry. That was the first step. I got a general view of what happened. And I said, okay, this is what happened. And then I had gaps I had to fill in because my great-grandfather walked the entire way.
What?
But yeah, he walked the entire way.
From Michoacan?
Sonora.
Yeah, well, they rode a horse and a wagon in the records. Yeah, so there was no cars in the 20s that they could have because they didn't have any money. And that's why he came here, because they had no money.
Yeah.
So he walked 95% of the way, I think. Ooh. And I was like, all right, well, I need to modernize it, right? So I had the option to put the beast in the book, which is that train they ride. But there's a lot of fatalities and negative things associated with that. And I was like, all right.
And they're associated a lot with Central Americans too, because they ride it all the way.
And I was like, I can't put that because kids might Google it. And I don't know. I was just, I didn't want anything. I had to eliminate all the negative stuff or scary stuff. And I really was asking kids and their families, you know, what is this like? You know, what did you guys do when you came over? Things like that. So I interviewed like 30 people, and I kind of filled in the gaps. That was mostly though, not for like chronologically, but to get in their head mentally.
Yeah.
So that when kids read the book, they're mentally feeling what he's feeling.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where that came from.
As a visual, like storytelling, like visually storytelling, like how it looks like and what
background
that's really
of it,
cool.
the journey. That's for sure. How have kids reacted to the book and then your interaction with them? When you ask them if they know what immigration is, or if they have somebody in the family, right? How does that make you feel? What the reaction is, and the number of hands that go up every time that you ask those questions?
Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
if you go on my Instagram, Eduardo Deniz, Deniz. So if you go to my Instagram, you'll see a bunch of videos of me asking kids that. That's the first question I asked. I said, you know, does anyone know what the term immigration means? And a lot of them do, and a lot of them don't. And then if they don't, I'll ask them, okay, how many of you are from South or Central America? Raise your hand. And they'll all raise their hand. And then I'll say, okay, how many of you have family that are still there? And they all leave their hands up. And I said, those people that are there, if they come here, they're immigrants.
Yeah.
And that's who I come from. And that's why I'm here today to talk to you. So, and then I go into the book. So it's a really good reception. I think the kids love the book. They love the character. There's not a whole lot of Mexican characters out there. This book is meant to be a springboard for my other books because
your trilogy.
Yeah. He does more than just, immigrate. He gets a job and then he has a career. He does other things. So this is really meant to give, the whole picture of who he is.
It's amazing. I mean, to have that. I was looking at some of the videos too, and I was wondering how the adults responded to the connections that these elementary kids that they're, have in their schools, and what the understanding of, the concept, the journeys, and the current connections and ties to their families. They're still abroad.
Yeah, it's interesting because my book is meant to not cover everything, but simply be an icebreaker. Yeah. So it's simply an icebreaker to read the book, and there's questions in the back, right? The questions for reflection. They say like, I don't know what they say actually.
Questions for immigration facts.
Yeah, so questions for reflections like, why do some people like Luz choose to immigrate to other countries? Yes. So there's facts, you show that there's facts and there's questions the kids can answer. It's really meant to be like an icebreaker.
I love it. That's the thing. It's stirring these conversations, and it's getting in, like you said, getting in their minds, like that just page that I was just reading. It's like, it says Luz was so happy he was able to get on the bus, but he was sad that he wasn't able to celebrate his 15th birthday. We don't think about all of these things, we start seeing billboards, and I think it's really important right now in this environment that we're in not just the US, but around in Mexico, but all around the world. We get in so big in the headlines and the tabloids, what it says, what is an immigrant? We forget that an immigrant is a human. Yeah, exactly. That an immigrant is a person that is
connected to a family and to others that
left their home, that also has memories, that has holidays, but they're like, have we thought about other people, other cultures, or do we just judge? That's the thing that I really am a big fan of the conversations you're stirring up right now. What is your hope and dream for, this project and where it's going?
My hope is that this book and the second and third book, they can be sitting as a, trilogy, as a package, and that maybe in 5-10 years, it's at every school so that there's more compassion towards people, anyone you see on the street. And the second book is about him becoming a farm worker because there's a huge awareness that, these people are doing a lot of work and they're not getting the recognition they deserve.
Yes.
And they're being talked about in a negative light.
Yes.
And they don't deserve that.
Yes.
My great grandfather, he didn't come here for that. He came here to provide a better life for himself and for me. He didn't know me, but but
he did.
Yeah, exactly. He knew that he wanted something good for me. And, if I have children one day, my own children and their children, and that's why he did it. And that's why everyone does it, right? They come here to have a better life and better opportunities. Who wouldn't do that?
Right. Exactly. And, and I think that it's so cool that book is at what point those thoughts start. And in this particular story, in like many others, my mom migrated when she was 16 years old, so these are children that are starting in thinking about different things. So I really like how you've stirred these conversations. And how can we support you as readers and the audience in your journey? You gave us your Instagram is at Edward Dennis.
It's Eduardo. Yes.
Eduardo.
And then you guys can buy the book on Amazon. That'd be awesome. Leave a review.
This is the first one. There's 2 more coming next year.
I have, let's see, September 15th, the first day, Hispanic Heritage Month. The second book comes out. It's called The the boy from Mexico becomes a farm worker. It's with United Farm Workers. So UFW is going to be in the book. They did the fact page and they fact checked every page.
Yes, that's what I was seeing here too, which is so cool because it's true. Like, let's say you're third generation, right? Let's say my daughter, I don't have a daughter yet. My sister, her daughter is second generation, and she's a no sabo kid.
Yeah.
And we're trying so hard. It becomes so hard to teach them to get integrated to a culture that they're not connected to. She's not connected to it, even though we want to. But I love how this one is like facts about Mexico. That's really cool. And also, what advice and message would you give before we start wrapping up? What advice or message would you give the community that's listening to us right now, especially those who are interested in either amplifying social justice conversations or their art? Yeah,
I've worked for a lot of companies, a lot of big companies, some of the biggest on the planet.
Which are like Paramount. I just wanted so that they know, like okay, we're
yeah. So like Disney, Toyota, Mercedes-Benz, Anheuser-Busch. I mean, I have to look at my bio. I don't remember,
but those are some. Just
I work a lot.
Yes,
but,
you work a lot.
Yeah. So I would just say that you can't give up, and you need to kick the door down. No one's going to give you an opportunity, unfortunately. No one's ever, just cold emailed me and said, hey, you want a job? I've always had to beg. I've had to fight for everything I have. When I was doing my book, I got rejected a lot, and I could have gave up after 50 rejections.
Yeah.
But I kept going, and I would just say, never give up. There's always going to be an opportunity. Someone's going to eventually say yes, and it only has to work once. If you want to get a book or you're doing a film, I'm going through the exact same thing I went through. I'm good at the publishing stuff now, but I'm doing the exact same thing with the film. I have a producer attached to it, and I'm having the same rejection thing, except now that I have a proof of concept, which is the books, people are just offering me money to eliminate me from the project because they want to direct it, they want to write it, and I'm like, I'll keep getting rejected. I'll keep turning down hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't care if I have to. This is a personal family story. And I don't think my great grandfather would appreciate me selling his story to someone,
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I'm going through the same thing right now. But I have the same mentality. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. Good thing this took fast. This only took a few months.
It doesn't take that long.
Yeah. I wonder.
Go ahead. No, you.
So I wonder, as a visual storyteller, and in this, the animation industry as a whole, going back and forth from Arizona to Arizona, to California and in Arizona. Have you ever been at a crossroads where you had to, as a Latino visual storyteller, put your foot down, or having to say, hey, I'm here and I can tell you because I know, and take my word for it? And representations does play a huge role.
Yeah, I really want to make a movie, and I've had a lot of producers that weren't Hispanic, water down the story, not include some of the stuff that I wrote or I illustrated. And I have to say, like, hey, the book's doing really well, because the book is actually doing really good this year. I had a lot of school districts in California buy a book for every kid at their school.
Wow.
So then I get to show those numbers to the producers and stuff and say, hey, this will sell if we turn it into animated. There's more books coming out.
Right.
That's why I did the books first. And I really have to just stay in my in my conviction of this is something that I think kids need to see animated.
Like you believe, I feel like this thing, your belief and your faith for this is unwavering, which you can hear in your voice, which is great. Which also connects me to this other question. Being a person who is getting back connected to my roots, there's a huge side of it that is unknown. What advice do you give us kids that are, kids now adults that are connecting to our families that are, 2-3 generations back, I do know that this sense is shared to be so hungry to know the history, because we didn't grow up with our history in our schools.
And they didn't teach it. Yeah.
They didn't teach it to us. So we're literally,
many times our parents, you have to ask those questions to really get.
Yeah. But then some didn't go to school until elementary, then had to, so how do you do that?
Well, so that's a really good question. That's a question that I've been on for a couple of years. So I finished all 3 of these books, in 2020, maybe 21. So I've actually been done with these books for a while, and I'm working on a new series. I won't say the name because I don't want anyone to take my idea, but I'm starting a new series that is about me and my struggle with, being Mexican American, being Mexican and American. And, I won't go into what it is, but I will say our culture is very beautiful. When the Spanish came off their ships and they saw the Mayan and Aztec empires, they couldn't believe that they built cities that were bigger than Spain. They couldn't believe that the people had a government. They couldn't believe that they had pyramids that were that geometrically sound, right? All these things. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe that
the riches,
the people were they couldn't believe, that's where they conquered them because of the riches, but they couldn't believe that the people were so clean. They couldn't believe how they farmed and the food they had, whether it was avocados or corn, right? They couldn't believe any of that stuff. And I think, I don't know why our cultures and our history is not taught, specifically Mesoamerican. I don't know why it's not taught in schools. I don't make that policy or anything. But I will say that our culture and our people are the languages they speak and the food we make and the art we make, the colors were so far ahead of anything they had. And they were ahead of us in a lot of ways too. Right.
Right.
But we have a lot to be proud of.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I actually personally navigating my story. It's taken me through an interesting path. Like, it's funny because, I hear now, different interviews of different people that I've looked up to, and they're like, my life's work has become. And now I'm saying like my life's work is connecting to my roots, because within that it becomes all of this healing work. And, my purpose has been healing myself, my own self. And through that, I found this lineage of healing people within my family. It's funny how we get so connected back to our roots. Any closing
knowing your
thoughts?
history really makes
it does. I didn't even know we're indigenous. I didn't know that until I got older, because they didn't teach us that in school.
Yeah, exactly. And I was telling my mom, I'm reading this book. It's Women Who Glow in the Dark. It's by Elena Avila. A really good book if you're into healing. And this one's particularly is Aztec, Mayans, and the curanderismo practices. But it goes into the mexicas and the very first woman who was, created the Mexicanos. So anyways, but yeah, those are very interesting stories of how you can get so connected through visual storytelling. Thank you so much for being here today and
for
your work.
Collecting, and then also for spreading history, for sharing your personal story with us and with so many kids.
Yes.
That is going to make a difference, and taking that first step into taking action.
Yeah, and empowering themselves.
Yes,
Empodérate.
Yes, thank you for having me, and I hope I can come back when my next book comes out.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
We hope you can come back with your next book comes out, and then the next one, and then the film, and then the next film, and the next film.
I hope so.
You've been carrying Luz also. Is he available also?
Not yet. I hope so. I had someone.
Because with the holidays coming, I was just thinking,
It's like,
he's got his little
this is like
backpack,
a perfect gift. Actually, I'm getting my niece into reading because I feel like as Hispanics, we need to do a better job of getting, our kids into different things. This is going to be a great gift for the holidays.
Have you thought about publishing in Spanish? This book?
I don't have the say in that. I asked them. I didn't know this. If we have a second, I'll tell this story. I didn't know this, but when you sign a contract for your book, there's other rights. There's foreign language rights. And then each language has their own contract within that. And then there's audio rights. So there's actually an audio book for this. I had a really talented, I didn't have it. The publisher had a really talented guy read the book. He's done video games and movies before. He's an actor. He did a beautiful job. I would check that out. But on my Amazon page, it's on Audible. But yeah, that was like a different contract.
I did see it on your website. I saw one. That looks beautiful.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
That's a really good lesson also to keep in mind. Like,
I know.
So publishing in other languages.
I asked them, I said, is this going to come out in Spanish? And they were like, well, we have to talk to our foreign language division. And then they sent me a completely different contract, and they send the book out to, it's weird, other publishers. So same with the audiobook, another publisher buys the audio rights, just like someone, I guess a Spanish publisher would buy the Spanish rights and they would divvy up royalties.
Wow.
That's interesting. I have seen books in English and then in Mexico in Spanish, and they even have many times a different cover.
Yeah.
Right. So then I'm like, that makes perfect sense because it's a different contract with maybe different publishers.
And it's one of those things too, it ultimately depends on how much this book sells. So I only have a second book coming out because this book did well.
So let's keep buying.
Thank you.
Let's keep supporting. Yes, let's keep supporting. And we look forward to having you here.
Y luego Ramla.
Sí.
Para la pregunta.
The last question. Sí. Okay, I just have to say, because we even forgot to say, so this book is about a 14-year-old boy, ¿verdad?
Yes.
Okay, so I just was reading there.
Yeah, he was 14 when he left.
14, and it's okay. So just if you guys want to follow along, it's a teenager. It is a really cool story. And now going back into our guest, Edward. How do you find your flavor? ¿Cómo le da el sabor a tu vida? How do you get flavor for your life? How do you fill your cup? Obviously, your heart's passionate to give, but how do you fill your cup?
I like to ride my bike. So yeah, I ride my bike every day. So I don't leave my house. It's weird. I have a home studio. I just bought a new house and I have a home studio. Thank you. I have a home studio in there. So it's got everything I need. It's got my art stuff. I work on my bikes. And if I leave my house, I'm either doing something like this or reading at a school or I'm riding my bike.
Nice.
Thank you so much for taking the time and then for coming over. I seen those videos. You look like you can also compete.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I run. Well,
and you can also win awards there.
Tour de Tucson's going to be there.
Right? I know.
Thank you.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming over again. Another talented representation story of who we are, what we do, and what we bring to this wonderful world of us, and also sharing our story, sharing our history. An award-winning published author, visual storyteller came in to share his story today. And we are very thankful for this. Nos vemos en la siguiente episodio en Empodérate. Síganos por favor en Instagram, CPLC Empodérate.
Empodérate. At CPLC Empodérate.
En Instagram. Muchísimas gracias. Hasta la próxima.